Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you. I love it. Thank you so much, everyone. Can I first of all say how wonderful it is to see you all again? I feel deprived of your company, and how grateful I am to all of you for everything that you've been doing over the last few weeks, and for coming so late tonight to this venue, way past Keir Starmer's bedtime. Now, if you're slightly surprised to see me, I want to be absolutely clear that I was glad when Rishi asked me to help. And of course, I couldn't say no. And I'm here for one reason and one reason only, which is the same reason as all of you, all of us are here. We're here because we love our country. And whatever our differences, they are utterly trivial by comparison with the disaster we may face if these so-called opinion polls are right. And it's still an if. I think and hope the British people will show more sense on Thursday and draw back from the brink. But if these polls are right, then at the very moment when this country has beaten COVID and beaten post-COVID inflation, at the very moment when we should be encouraging enterprise and growth and putting some money into home ownership and putting some money into people's pockets, Westminster is about to go in diametrically the opposite direction. And so none of us can sit back as a Labour government prepares to use a sledgehammer majority to destroy so much of what we have achieved, what you have achieved. 5 years ago, you helped to send Jeremy Corbyn and his then disciple, Keir Starmer, into orbit where they belonged, and we got Brexit done. We restored democracy. We restored democracy to our country, and it was because we got a proper Brexit, and you will all remember how hard that fight was, that we came out of the EU single market and we controlled our own regulation. And my friends, whatever people may say, that national independence was vital when it came to approving COVID vaccines faster than any EU country, and therefore getting the fastest vaccine rollout of any major economy and the fastest economic rebound in the G7. And let me just ask you, in case you've forgotten, because I haven't had a chance to remind you recently, which, of all the 200 countries on earth, which was the first government, after all the miseries of COVID, to put a licensed, approved and effective vaccine into the arms of our citizens? It was the British government. It was a Brexit government. It was a Conservative government, and it was thanks to Brexit, which you helped to deliver. This country was able to take the lead in standing up for Ukraine, in delivering the AUKUS agreement, many other things, taking back control of our money, our laws. Thanks to Brexit, that we can today finally legally control our own borders. And is it not therefore the height of insanity, if these polls are right, that we are about to give Labour a supermajority, which they will use to make us nothing but the punk of Brussels, taking EU law by dictation with no say on how that law is made, paying into Brussels budgets again, you watch, as the price for access, scrapping the Rwanda scheme, just as it is on the verge of coming into force, just as it is being imitated by governments around the world, and just as actually being to act as a deterrent, and bringing back uncontrollable free movement as the price of Starmer's deal with the EU. Now, do you think this country really wants to give Starmer that kind of mandate? I don't think they do, and yet Labour are so cocky that they're so complacent, they're so smug, they're barely concealing their agenda anymore. And we can see what it is. Whacking up taxes on pensions, on property, persecuting private enterprise, attacking private education and private healthcare, with all the pointless extra burden that will place on the taxpayer. And all the time, poor old Starmer is so terrified of disobeying left-wing dogma that he's reluctant to explain the difference between a man and a woman, and he just sits there with his mouth opening and shutting like a stunned mullet. Do we want this kind of madness? Do we want ever higher taxes? Do we want more wokery imposed on our schools? And yet this is coming now, this week. This gigantic, unless we change it, this gigantic Labour majority pregnant with horrors. Because even though Labour's share of the vote right now is far lower than ours was in 2019, and even though Starmer has record low approval ratings for a man in his position, supposedly on the verge of office, our system, I'm afraid, will deliver that supermajority because too many good, kind, moderate Tories are about to vote for other parties, apparently, and thereby get exactly the opposite of what they really want. Even if those other parties turn out to be full of Kremlin crawlers who actually make excuses for Putin's 2022 invasion of Ukraine. They say Putin's a good operator, puffing their cheroots. Putin's a good operator, runs a tight ship, you know. Well, if that's what they mean by a man who shoots journalists and poisons his opponents and murders thousands of innocent Ukrainian civilians, I say shame on them. They can achieve... They can achieve nothing at this election except to usher in the most left-wing Labour government since the war with a huge majority, and we must not let it happen. Don't let the Putinistas deliver the Corbynistas. Don't let Putin's pet parrots give this entire country psittacosis, which is a disease you get, by the way, from cozying up to pet parrots. Ladies and gentlemen, friends, if you actually want higher taxes next week, this year, if you feel you've got a few thousand to spare, then vote Labour on Thursday. If you want uncontrolled immigration and mandatory wokery and pointless kowtowing to Brussels again, then go right ahead, make my day, vote for Starmer. But if you want to protect our democracy and our economy and keep this country strong abroad by spending 2.5% of our GDP on defence, which Labour still refuses to commit to, then you know what to do, don't you, everybody? Yeah. There's only one thing to do. Vote Conservative on Thursday, my friends. And I know you will. I know you will. But in the brief time that we have left, I hope that you will encourage everybody else in this country to do the same. Thank you very much. Thank you.